Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my top 10 First Doctor stories ranking. As I mentioned in previous reviews, I'm doing ranking lists for the top 5/10 stories for each Doctor, with the exception of the 8th and War Doctors, as they have only 2 or 3 each, so they're getting top 5 moments, and the same is going for the movie Doctor, which I'll be doing soon. 6, 7 and 9 are getting top 5s, as will 13 if the latest story, by the time we get around to that, is still Resolution, but it may go to top. But if we got a new episode by then, if we've got Series 12 coming up or has finally been released, then it'll probably go to a top 10 list. And all the rest will be Doctors 1 to 5 and 10, 11 and 12 will be top 10s. And like I said, if 13s, if the latest series, if Series 12's out or coming out by then it can go to a top 10 list. It might even wait until Series 12 is out so we can see what's there. If Resolution is still the latest episode, or if Series 12 is coming out later, then if there's a Christmas or special, Christmas or New Year special out, but not the series yet, then it will still be top 5, like 6, 7 and 9. So anyway, maybe updated later on. So, let's get started with the top 10 First Doctor stories list. We're also going to include dishonourable and honourable episodes, or mentions episodes / stories, or in the case of 8 War and movie moments. So, just get my lists for both First Doctor and movie Doctors, because I'll be doing the movie Doctors after my Dalek Mania review, which I'll be doing after this. So, let's get started with the top, the best First Doctor's stories. Before we do that, though, the honourable and dishonourable mentions. Dishonourable mentions first. The Romans. From Season 2. The Romans is easily the weakest William Hartnell story, and so far my least favourite story so far. Oh, don't worry, it's going to be beaten by a Patrick Troughton story towards the end of his era, so we've got a long time before that. Well, maybe not as long, but certainly we still got a bit of a while until then. But certainly, The Romans is just... sometimes it's good, but most of the time it's just dull. I mean, I got bored with the Savages, and I think I would like to lower my score from 6 to 5 out of 10 on that one. I think I'm going to officially lower my score on the Savages from 6 to 5. Sadly, it's already out, so I can't change it now. But can change it, but in the actual review. But I can say here I'm changing it to a 5. I'm still putting it above the Gunfighters, but I still think it's weak. But I think The Romans is the weakest story of all of the William Hartnells. And, yeah, I think historicals in the Hartnell era are... you're going to have ones that are good and ones that are not so good. And this is the weakest of the not so good ones. We're going to have a couple of good ones on the actual top 10 list. Well, maybe one, but here it's not that great. Check out my review for more opinions and more reasoning. As for the honourable mention, my honourable mention is a good historical story, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve from Season 3. Now, on first viewing, this was one of my least favourite stories of the Hartnell era originally, and it was not very good. And I also want to comment on Alex Patterson, aka the Doctor Who Guide's videos of loose cannon reconstructions on VHS. I had it put down as my 11th out of 11. I have moved that up to a middle ground, same with Galaxy 4 being second, being moved down to around the middle as well. Celestial Toymaker remains one of my favourites though, my number one on that list though. And so, yeah, the Massacre is actually pretty good, and it's nice seeing Stephen going around being the main character for a bit, so that's nice. And yeah, it's actually quite good on a rewatch. There are some nitpicks, but it's still good, it's decent. I think more people would like this if this one was a found story and we got to see it in full, but as it is, it's decent, it's good. So, onto the list proper with number 10, The 10th Planet. I feel more, with any story, this one is here more of obligation, because it's the last story. It's a good last story. I don't love it, but it's a good last story. I think it's a fitting end for William Hartnell. But it's more obligation at anything. It's still a 9 out of 10. I think all of these top 10s are 9 or 10 out of 10s. But this one feels more here for obligation than any of the others. It was originally going to be an 8 out of 10 and The Massacre was going to be here. But after rewatching, I actually had a bit more of enjoyment for it and liked it a bit more, so I thought, yes, it's a very good fitting end for Hartnell's Doctor, and I think a 9 out of 10 would work. So here it is. It's, as I said, it's not one of my favourites. As you can tell, it's number 10, but it's still a very good story and a great way for Hartnell to go out on. It's not perfect. It's not Case of Androzani, but it's still a very good story. And yep, actually, regeneration episodes aren't always the best ones. I think classic series does them better than the post-regeneration stories. Again, Twin Dilemma is a good example of this, although Power of the Daleks is one of the exceptions. And new series, whilst there are mostly the regeneration stories aren't so great, but the post-regeneration stories are great. Again, Parting the Ways and Christmas Invasion exceptions. Although I do like I think the Christmas Invasion is great. I think Parting the Ways is better. Both Caves and Parting are how you do good regeneration stories. In my opinion, they are the best too. But 10th Planet, that's another good one. That's a good one. So moving on to number 9, which is a good historical, like The Massacre, but better. The Aztecs from Season 1. Yeah, this is probably the best historical, easily. It's just got some very good messages about interfering with time, and the characters are all doing great stuff. Maybe not so much Susan, but they're all doing some great stuff around, and you get to interact with these great characters. So it's fun, and it's got some good stuff. It does take its time to do everything, but it does have this Season 1 historical vibe that you get throughout Season 1, especially in the historicals, and a little bit in Season 2. Not so much in Season 3 or 4. So yeah, so it's a good, decent one, and I'm glad that it survives. It's one of the few, alongside the Romans, and thanks to animation, the Reign of Terror. But those two I don't find particularly great, as you can tell, with my dishonourable mention for one of them, and also An Unearthly Child, mostly a complete historical apart from the first episode, which makes sense to do it completely historical to start with before moving into more sci-fi territory with the Daleks. Neither of these two are appearing on this list, by the way. So, anyway, moving on to number 8. Number 8 is a pseudo-historical, the first of its kind if you discount the first episode of An Unearthly Child and a couple of episodes in The Chase. This is The Time Meddler from Season 2. I've always liked and enjoyed this story. I thought it's a very good story. Dennis Spooner has finally written a good story after some disappointing works with the Reign of Terror and the Romans. Wow, those two again. But script editing, he's done a mostly good job, and now he's finally managed to write a great script with The Time Meddler, a more fun pseudo-historical that sees the Doctor having to not the Vikings, although he does have some conflict with them, not any locals, although the companions have a little bit of conflict with them. No, he's facing a person from his own race. This is the first time since Susan we get to see a fellow Time Lord, as we later told is their name in the War Games, from his own planet Gallifrey, which is named even later in John Pertwee's last season in the Time Warrior, although previously known as Jewel in some comics earlier in the Pertwee era, but then later named Gallifrey in the Time Warrior. But yeah, it's really fun, and Peter Butterworth does an amazing job as the monk. He's probably one of the best, if not the best, guest star of the Hartnell era, just because he is so great as the monk. I mean, I would also say Nicholas Courtney as Brett Vayon can also compete with him. Also, Kevin Stoney as Marvick Chen, but and maybe Julian Glover as King Richard, but still got some amazing stuff here in this story, and Butterworth's performance is amazing, and you've got some other great stuff happening in this story. It's a brilliant way to round off season 2 and make it feel a little bit different to how it started. Not so much as season 3's start and end felt so different to the start, but it's definitely got the difference. You can feel the difference at the end of the Time Meddler, as you had at the start of Planet of Giants. So, yeah, the Time Meddler, great stuff. Number 7, we're now moving back to the start of Season 2 for the Dalek Invasion of Earth from Season 2. This story is epic. This story is amazing. This story is brilliant. And it's a great second instalment for the Daleks. A superb sequel to the first story, and it's just brings Daleks to London, and location filming is great. It's previously been done with the Reign of Terror and maybe a little bit of Planet of Giants, maybe. Smugglers would definitely be a bit more of an wider use of the location filming, but here it's used to it benefits the story as well as the execution, because it is so good, it's so cool, and it just looks really great, especially the chase scenes in London. It looks really great, and it's got some great moments. There are some weaker bits, and some pathetic deaths and or executions. Some of them are done better in the movie version, whilst others are either not worried about, like the Sliverer, or the roles are expanded, like Philip Maddox's character in the film. In this story, he's just there to supply some food, and then he's killed by the Sliverer. In the movie, he gets a bit more to do. And the pathetic deaths, there was this one woman who gets chopped to the neck by the Roman man. I don't even know if she's dead or not. We don't see her get up. I'm presuming she's dead. And the guy who screams "help me" when he's cornered by Daleks. In the film, we don't see the flashback of the Roman man chopping anyone in the neck, although when they do, it probably does kill or injure people. And as for the guy who gets cornered by the Daleks, there's a great action scene with that one. That's how I talk about in the review. So, yeah, so the film does some stuff better than the story, although I do think the story has quite a lot of great moments going for it as well, like the chase scenes. The Daleks smashing bits with the van are on par with each other in both versions, and getting to know a bit more of the lore and information about what the Daleks are doing in the story. That's very good. So moving on to number 6, and this story is the first story from this season, Planet of Giants from Season 2. Now, I just found this one a bit more fun and enjoyable than Dalek Invasion of Earth, and that's why that one came higher on the Season 2 ranking. But I think Dalek Invasion of Earth is so great, it's just behind it on the overall First Doctor list. and possibly maybe even overall story episodes, depends on where I rank other stories. The entire show history list from An Unearthly Child to Resolutions is so massive, and gets complicated when you get to Shada, and more so when you get to Trial of a Time Lord. So by the time you get to Planet of the Dead, which is the 200th story, you're wondering, is it actually number 200? Or is it 204 or 205 or something? Yeah, so by the time you get to the time in the Rani, you're a bit confused. Let alone the mighty 200, that is Planet of the Dead. I think we must be somewhere... I think we're somewhere between 250 and 300 at the moment. Looking forward to story 300 when that comes along. Anyway, Planet of Giants is just really fun, really enjoyable, kind of sideways story that lets us have a story in the present day, rather than past or future with aliens or anything. It's got some sci-fi elements, like they're shrunk down to the size of an inch because of dematerialization issues. But besides that, it's mostly contemporary. It's mostly just normal. It's like how the War Machines goes about. I would say that's even a bit more sci-fi with its with the Wotan gaining intelligence and War Machines. But it's still a very good. Both stories are very good of what an example of what contemporary stories set on present day Earth would look like, especially facing a alien or some sort of menace, as we'll get to see a little bit more in Troughton's era, and then a great example of what the Pertwee era is going to look like. So, and quite a bit of the new series too, quite a bit. So yeah, Planet of Giants. Unearthly Child episode 1 was contemporary, but it was mostly just following Susan home and entering the TARDIS. That was the most sci-fi thing, and it wasn't really dealing with a threat until they went back in time. So this is the first time we get a threat or any kind in a contemporary setting. And yeah, so Planet of Giants is a really great story. Number 5. Number 5 is a controversial story from audiences, and not just because it uses a racial slur during a nursery rhyme context. Number 5 is The Celestial Toymaker from Season 3. I say controversial because it's kind of a mixed reception. There are some people who really like it, like me, and then there are some people who aren't so keen on it, or just think episode 4 is the only necessary one, maybe 1 as well. Yeah, and like I said, this does not include this is putting the racial slur in a nursery rhyme context to the side, although I think the story would get even more hate if it was not used in that context, if it was used as an insult, for example, or a reference. What kind of is a reference, but in a nursery rhyme context. A nursery rhyme that we can change, obviously. Anyway, so, but ignoring that, the Celestial Toymaker is fun, imaginative, enjoyable, creative. It's just so much fun. And Michael Goff is another amazing guest star. I should mention, he is amazing as the Celestial Toymaker. Oh, I would have liked him back. Apparently he was asked to come back for a Big Finish audio, Toymaker, but he declined, and so that story didn't get made. Instead, they made it Omega. Made Omega instead, which I've heard is bad. I haven't heard that one yet. I've heard Davros and Master, but apparently they are good. Those ones are good. Master is probably my favourite Big Finish at the moment. But, yeah, Omega, I've heard it's not very good. So, might have been better if Toymaker had been there. Oh well. Would have had him against the Fifth Doctor, and also if the original season 23 had gone ahead, the first story of that season, The Nightmare Fair, would have seen Goff return as the Celestial Toymaker in a more Sixth Doctor-y style story to face off. The Sixth Doctor would have played a video game in order to save the world, and Perry would be trapped somehow. I can't remember exactly what happens to her, but something happens to her, and it sounded good. In fact, season 23, the one they planned, sounded amazing, around the similar lines of season 22. But of course, thank you to Michael Grove. See, you can tell how much I like him by getting his name wrong. Thanks to Mr. Michael Grove, the show was put on hiatus for 18 months, and the new season 23 was drastically different to not only what came before, but also what they had planned with the trial of a Time Lord. Season 27, I will say, also looks pretty interesting, but when the show was cancelled, oh well. Both planned seasons would have seen the return of the Ice Warriors, which had not previously been seen since 1974. It took until 2013 for them to actually return properly. Goodness, is it something about the Ice Warriors that has people say, let's cancel this season until the new series where people were wanting them to come back? I don't know. But anyway, the Celestial Toy Maker is great. It's a great, amazing and enjoyable story, and yes, brilliant. Number 4 is my favourite story from season 1, and it is really fun, really entertaining, and it's the first type of a story where it's multi-parts, but each episode or episodes can look at a more particular area or adventure for that episode or part of the episode or over the course of some episodes, as opposed to one big giant adventure. And even some of those one big full-on stories can have separate bits going on, like Dark Invasion of Earth. But like the Chase, this one has a bit more stuff doing per episode, and it's a great template for that, and it's one of the better ones. It holds up really well. And this story is The Keys of Marinus from season 1. I've always liked this story. I thought it was a very good, really entertaining story, and it's got quite a lot of good stuff. Every episode has something different. Episode 1, you're there on the planet, you're learning about everything, and you get to see what's happening around this planet. Episode 2, you move to this supposedly perfect world, but it's all a trick, it's all a lie. 3, you go to a big plant, jungle-like place. Part 4, you then move on to very snowy mountain where your main enemy is this hunter who helps you a little bit, followed by these knights. Part 5, we take a little bit of a step down after the previous few episodes, but yeah, we see Ian on trial, accused of murdering a guy, and there's a whole conspiracy about. And Part 6 finishes up this story because it's not finished yet by the end of the episode. It's still got to finish up for the next half of the episode, and then the last half of the final episode is wrapping it all up with the main villain having to stop the main villain once and for all, and eventually stopping his plans and saving the day. So yeah, Keys of Marinus, it's got something for everyone. It's great, and it's still got this great story running through it. It's really good. So yeah, and helps and sets up a template for other stories that will come that are long but have these individual mini stories going on throughout them, which is great. But we'll go back to a shorter full-on story for this next one. Number 3 is exactly what Planet of Giants was doing, but with a bit more of a sci-fi feel, and is a very much the staple, the original staple slash example of a contemporary setting story on present-day Earth. This is The War Machines from season 3. I've always enjoyed this one, just like the Time Meddler and later Keys of Marinus, as well as some of these other ones on this list. But this one is, I actually, out of all of them, I actually lost a bit more enjoyment for this one over a bit of time. I did the same with the Time Meddler, but this one a bit more so. So when I came back to, but I knew I really liked it, certainly more than the Gunfighters and the Savages. But when I came back to rewatch it, I fucking loved it! Okay, the second half, it did slow down a little bit, but it was still really interesting, really enjoyable. And William Hartnell is probably at his best ever in this story. I mean, 10th Planet probably is a close rival. But despite being unwell, William Hartnell is at his best in this story. So, yeah, and he gets quite a lot more to do, which is something that can't be said for some other stories due to his health. But here they managed to I guess he was in good health for this story because he does a lot. He is the one we follow most of the adventure, maybe apart from the stuff when Ben's doing his investigating, or when Dodo and Polly are hanging out at the bar. But, well, you've got to give the man some rest. Even if he was well, you've got to give him a bit of a rest. But William Hartnell is just fantastic in this story, and the rest of the cast do a great job as well, especially Michael Cranes as Ben, and he and Annika Wells have such great chemistry in the first episode. It makes me really happy that the companions. My only nitpick is we don't get enough time with Polly before or after she's hypnotised for her to be as much of a companion as Ben, but the season that follows will prove Polly is a very capable companion as much as Ben's. The Smugglers definitely shows her more caring sides and more helpful sides, certainly, and the Tenth Planet does as well. I do think she's put to the side quite a bit in quite a few of these stories, though. This may be due to 60s writings of women, so female characters in the series. So you even got, apart from possibly Barbara and Vicky, they're either the screamy, crying ones, or with not very much development, or they're put to the side for a bit. Sarah is probably also an exception, come to think of it. And maybe Zoe, but certainly Susan and Victoria screen quite a lot. Polly does a few screens, but she's mostly a good companion, but she is put to the side a couple of times. Dodo is boring. Katerina is worse. And I think that's about it. Sarah is awesome. And had Pauline Collins' character from The Faceless Ones been a companion, she would have been good, I think. She was a no-nonsense character. Anyway, so... yeah, War Machine's fantastic. And has possibly the best William Hartnell performance in the show. So, there we go. But it's not my favourite, as you are aware. My two favourites contain my favourite monster of all time. Number 2 is, well, this story is underrated compared to the other stories featuring this monster in both this Doctor's era and this decade of the show, and is usually overlooked when talking about the monster stories. It is The Chase from Season 2. You can tell who my favourite monsters / villains / aliens are in the series now. That's right, it's the Daleks. And we've already had a Dalek story on here already, the Dalek Invasion of Earth, and now we've got 2 more. This time, this one, we have something a bit like the Keys of Marinus. Each episode does something a bit different. The first 2 are on the desert planet Atrios, but part 1 is a bit more of a fun, enjoyable break for the TARDIS stream after some pretty harsh adventures, and before we go into this chase, and they're looking on the time space visualizer for half the episode, and then they're just having a relaxing holiday, looking around. It might not be so interesting for some people, but this slower pace is pretty good, especially compared to some of the other ones, and it's a lot more fun. Part 2 actually has a bit more stuff on the planet about understanding more about it, and yeah, basically part 1 is minor setup for if a story was set on this whole planet, we would have had more about the planet as itself, but as it's only going to be here for another episode, we only have to have a few teasers before we have an actual adventure on the planet. Part 3, we then start the chase, and we get to go to the Mary Celeste, and then, well, actually, we go to 1966 New York, and I'm not sure why 66 instead of 65, but okay. And then we go to the Mary Celeste, and we have some nice short adventures then, and they're nice hopping about between place to place, and it's quite fun seeing the Daleks turn up and just missing them, and just either being funny like in New York, or being the reason why the Mary Celeste lost everyone, abandoned ship. I will stand by the fact that the Mary Celeste, everyone jumped ship from the ship, abandoned ship. In the Doctor Who universe, at least, I will stand by the fact that it was the Daleks that caused them to abandon ship. At least in the Doctor Who universe. I don't care what if any future story, expanded media, etc. says. The Daleks will always be the reason everybody on the Mary Celeste jumped ship. As for real life, well, I can joke about saying it was the Daleks, but in reality, I know that's not going to be the case, but in the Doctor Who universe, it is always going to be the case. So, there we go. And it's a nice little... It don't even have to have an entire couple of episodes on it. It just has to be half an episode on a small detour. It's fine. Part 4 is really interesting as well, as we get to go to the 1996 again. I'm not sure why 96, but okay. It wasn't even... I don't even think it was depicted in the actual scene. But we get to go to a haunted house, which is an attraction at the Festival of Ghana. I think it must be in Ghana, but I'm not sure exactly. And we get to see Frankenstein's House of Horrors, and Dracula, and this screaming woman, for some reason, and the Daleks are unable to fight against them to keep surviving, and Frankenstein is able to lift the Dalek up. The Daleks are used more for comedy in this one, which is fine by me, because I love the Aimless Wanderings audios, and the Daleks are more comedic there than ever. So I'm absolutely fine with the Daleks being more comedic, so long as you get them a bit more serious in other stories. Parting the Ways, they have a fantastic use of them being super, super cruel and evil in just by having one scene where they massacre everybody on Platform Zero. So if you got stuff like the Daleks being comical in one story, and then you have the Daleks being massacring people in another, then that's absolutely fine. You can explore both angles from that. So I'm absolutely fine with that. I'm actually absolutely fine with them having a joke after massacring people. Not so much before, but after. That'd be fine. Depending on the joke. Or the quip. And then part 5 we get... part 4 actually ends with Vicky on toward the TARDIS, and they're all... the Daleks' time machine, and they're all panicking about it. About stuff, and then they decide to stand their ground on the Mechanoids planet. Part 5 is a bit of a running around situation, but still got some good stuff. And then part 6 we meet the Mechanoids and Stephen, and then that's where the final battle takes place, and the time travellers make their escape and are able to avert the Daleks until the Doctor and Stephen meet them again in Masterplan. Speaking of which, number 1, here we go. This is my favourite first Doctor story, and I've been talking for quite a while, I'm sure. This is going to be a long ranking. Number 1 is, of course, The Daleks' Masterplan from Season 3. This story is perfect. Well, almost. I think I've listed my reasons for why I love this story in both the review and my Season 3 ranking, so I'm not going to go over it again. I'm not going to do what I just did with The Chase, as I've already did that in my Season 3 ranking, but I do bloody love this story. I think it's fantastic. I think it's amazing. Hartnell, again, is a great performance. Stephen, great. Katarina's okay in the stuff she gets, but really should have been Vicky. And Sarah, on the other hand, is fantastic. I would have liked Brett to become a bit more of a companion, but him being one of the best supporting characters is great. Chen is a great villain. The Daleks are at their best at this point in time, and I think the voices are at the best as well so far, excluding the second Dalek film. But for the show, Masterplan is the best time with the Dalek voices. It will improve in later stories, as will there may be some better stories down the line with the Daleks, but certainly at this point, the Dalek voices are at their best so far. And yeah, it's just an amazing story. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I've talked about it quite a lot in the Season 3 rankings, and I've already spent quite a lot of time on The Chase. But I will say this story is amazing, it's beautiful, it's brilliant. There are a few problems, like the Feast of Stephen, the entire episode, and the first couple of episodes can take their time to get going. But when they get going, they're great. And also Katarina. Well, she's okay in some bits, but most of the time she's just there. Yeah, that's not even that great. Maybe, well, it's good, but it's not that great. But I think the second half of the story, Feast of Stephen aside, is the better half, and that's where we get Dennis Spooner in. Dennis Spooner writes episodes 6 and 8 to 12, and I think those are the better episodes, and I think he's more of a payoff writer, and Terry Nation is more of a setup writer in this story's case. That being said, I do like Nation's episodes as well. It's just I think Spooner just made it even better, and yeah, so this Spooner's come a long way since writing The Reign of Terror and the Romans to writing the better half of the best story of the season, and Terry Nation still does a great job with the whilst the weaker half, it's still really good apart from the Feast of Stephen, and the Mission of Mission to the Unknown, if I was to include that as part of the story, but I'm not. It's an individual episode, and that's a bit low. That's going to go on a top 5 worst First Doctor stories, top 5, top 10, along with the Romans and the Reign of Terror, and the Gunfighters and the Savages. Ooh, that's 5 already. That's half the list done. Not sure if that's the exact order. But if Mission to the Unknown was included as part of the story, it's still, whilst it still be one of the weaker elements, it's still, as part of the entire story, still be good. So, yeah, Master Plan. Fantastic. So, that's it from my First Doctor top 10 episodes ranking. And just recap, dishonourable mention, The Romans from Season 2, and honourable mention, The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve from Season 3. And the official ranking, number 10, The 10th Planet from Season 4, number 9, The Aztecs from Season 1, number 8, The Time Meddler from Season 2, number 7, The Dalek Invasion of Earth from Season 2, number 6, Planet of Giants from Season 2, number 5, The Celestial Toymaker from Season 3, number 4, The Keys and Mariners from Season 1, number 3, The War Machines from Season 3, number 2, The Chase from Season 2, and number 1, The Daleks Master Plan from Season 3. So yeah, you got quite a few Season 2 and Season 3 stories. There wasn't as much Season 1, but I still think Season 1's a pretty solid story. I think it's the most solid in terms of feeling, because 2 and 3 feel very different from start to end, especially 3, but and 4 will as well because of so much change. But Season 1 is pretty much, in terms of feeling the same, it pretty much feels completely the same. It's just, I guess, maybe one thing that helped with the other 2 seasons is it had a bit more positive and more negative stories, and there was some more great stuff, but also some not so great stuff. Well, Season 1 was mostly the same for the most parts, whilst 2 and 3 experimented more, and some paid off better and some paid off worse. Season 4 is probably going to do this as well, but we'll see how it goes. It's probably going to start getting a bit, certainly since from the Power of the Daleks to Evil of the Daleks, it's probably going to feel a bit more samey. So from start of the Troughton era to the end of that point of to the end of the season. But in terms of the season overall, there will be a significant change thanks to the regeneration itself, as well as the introduction of Jamie. So yeah, so that's it from my William Hart First Doctor top 10 episodes ranking. Next up, I will be reviewing Dalek Mania. Then there will be a top 5 movie Doctor moments ranking, and then it will be an Adventure in Space and Time, which will completely finish off my First Doctor stuff, and then we can finally move on to the Second Doctor with the Power of the Daleks, which is definitely one that's a contender for my top Second Doctor stories ranking. It's a contender. We'll see how it goes. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Next up is number 9. Number 9 is a good historical, like The Massacre, except really good. The Aztecs from Season 1. And I forgot to say the 10th Planet was from Season 4, so the 10th Planet from Season... Oh, no, I don't just fix that. From Season 4, and you're just going to have to add that at the... after saying the 10th Planet. This story is epic. This story... Hang on, start again. So, anyways, moving on to number 6 is, sorry. See, I don't really like. But I still really, yeah, if it was included in this, if the number 10, the 10th planet from season 4, number 5, the Celestial Toymaker from season 3, number 4, the Keys of Marinus from season 1,